Welcome, everyone, to the Foremost Forecast, the podcast that brings you a better insurance experience through Foremost. I'm Ryan Farrell.
And I'm Alexis Nieves.
And we're your hosts here at the Foremost Forecast. Today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the vacant policy. And to go ahead and do that, we've actually brought a couple of guests here with us to talk about that. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure. My name is Matthew Cobb. I am a territory manager here at Foremost Insurance. And my role within Foremost is to help educate agents and work with them to grow their book of business. So specifically with vacant properties, it's about making sure they're aware of what coverages that we offer that maybe some of our competitors do not, and really to make sure they know the nuances of our policy.
My name is Bernie Kirt. I am a learning delivery instructor with the University of Farmers. So I work with our claims property adjusters and basically teach them insurance, teach them how to properly evaluate damages, properly evaluate policy coverages, and how to work with our agents on giving our customer the best experience possible.
And I'm Troy Bryant. I'm with Property Underwriting. So we underwrite, of course, the vacant product as well as our specialty dwelling and manufactured home products. And my primary role now is in training our underwriters. So any new underwriters that come on board, I guide them through the training process there. So.
All right, well, perfect. Then what we'll go ahead and do is just to start it off, we're going to go ahead and talk about what you see is going on in the vacant market and the positives and negatives. So let's just dive right in. What do you guys see is going on in the vacant market?
So I think there's a lot of opportunity in the vacant market right now, and the opportunity is different depending on where in the country you're looking at. In some markets like Grand Rapids, Michigan, for example, homes are moving very quickly, so the number of vacant homes are probably a little bit lower. In other parts of the country where there might be some economic slowdown, the opportunity is a little bit greater just because there are more homes on the market and they're not selling as quickly. It's a pretty diverse market right now, so depending on the situation, Foremost offers a lot of different solutions for different customers' needs. So sometimes it's someone who's unfortunately passed away and now they've left a home to somebody. It shouldn't be left under a homeowner policy. Same time, maybe someone is buying a house, flipping it, or even going to rent it out in the near future. Well, if someone isn't living in the house, it's a vacant property. So a lot of different opportunities, and that's where we can help out.
Yeah, and even in a market that's like moving, like the market in this area, you still have those times where someone's buying a house as an investment property and say they're taking some time to renovate it or cleaning it out, getting it ready for tenants. Any of that time in between when they bought it and they actually have it occupied, it fits right in our vacant program. And one of the cool things about that makes it easy is, say you do that, it's going to be vacant for a little while until you get it rented out. Our policies you can just endorse in most states, right from the vacant to the rental. You don't have to go through the process of rewriting it.
So how would I, with what you guys were just talking about, how would I use that if I'm an agent and I'm going and I'm talking to our insured or their customers? How are you going to use that information? Or just like you were talking about, the different changes that are going on in the market, how it's good some places it's, a little bit lacking. Mm-hmm. But how are you going to, if I'm an agent, tell me how do I use that in the conversation when I'm talking to my insured/customer? Yeah,
absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things is it's how an agent can bring value to their customer versus having that customer go online or just calling into a call center. They're able to build that relationship up with that customer. So it's when that agent is having that conversation with a customer, it's, okay, well, how long is it going to be vacant?
And I jump back to even the endorsed piece. That's something from a claims perspective that maybe we don't see all the value from. And I didn't do a ton of introducing, but I come from a claims background. And so it's always interesting to me to hear about things like that. So I'd like to hear even just a little bit more about the endorsement. Is it something that all carriers are doing? Does everybody allow you just to change occupancy with an endorsement, or what does that look like?
So from what I understand, not a lot of companies even have a vacant program to begin with, so we're kind of a little bit unusual in that aspect. But then you also jump into the fact that even if they have it, most of the time you are talking about a rewrite. So you're looking at, okay, I had this vacant policy, now I'm canceling it. Oh, your state now has a minimum earned premium. I'm canceling this vacant after 14 days, but I'm having to pay $200 in premium for that 14 days. Whereas if you can just endorse it, it just changes the rating from the vacant rate prorated, so you're paying the vacant rate for those 14 days only. And then now I'm paying the rate for the rest of the term as the rental rate.
It's definitely it definitely brings in an aspect of ease of use for an agent.
Yeah.
Beyond even the minimum earned premium, which a nice thing with Foremost is even though our policy is written on a 12-month basis compared to a lot of other carriers that might offer a 3-month or 6-month, our minimum earned premiums are typically very low. In fact, in some states, so for Illinois, for example, we have a $0 minimum earned premium. So compare that to some carriers that are as high as, I believe, 50%. It's definitely an advantage for an agent to sell a 12-month policy versus that 3 or 6. It's also the time, though. You know, you go through and it's okay, yeah, you have the minimum earned premium, but writing a policy doesn't take 5 seconds. And when you're not getting paid additionally or an extra commission because, okay, great, you wrote this vacant property on Tuesday, well, on Friday now you're writing it as a rental. That's still taking time out of your day. That's time that could be spent working with new customers or improving your agency or some other aspect that adds value versus just kind of circling around.
Because now you have a whole new application you're doing and all of that is effort that is unneeded.
So the nice thing there is the ease of the use for the agent's perspective. You know, hey, like you said, they've got other things that they can be working on, so to be able to quickly change that around is nice. And for the customer too, it's nice to know that, hey, we don't have to go through a whole new application. We can just get this changed around for you right now. So it's kind of an easy use on both levels. Kind of helps out the agent and it helps out the customer.
Correct. It also encourages agents to write the policy correctly the first time. So when one of the examples with how you were discussing that endorsement over is with landlord properties. So a lot of times I'll guess, well, it's going to be a rental property. Great, when's someone moving in? I don't know, 2 months from now? Well, hang on, it's not a rental property then at that point. It's vacant. And it's just building that understanding of if someone is not living in it, if there is not someone moving in, and you would be able to speak to this a little bit better from the underwriting standpoint, but from our standpoint, from the sales side, it's, look, if someone isn't living in it or if someone isn't moving in the next week, write it as vacant, because the last thing I want to hear is you wrote it as a landlord property and then a month from today you have a claim and our adjuster goes out there, does their job the way that they understand the policy, and there's no furniture in the property, there's nothing there, it's vacant, so it wasn't written correctly.
Yeah. And another thing that comes up with that too, we do property inspections on new business. So if it's written as the landlord policy and we go out there and inspect it, now all of a sudden we say, well, no, the inspector says it's vacant, it looks vacant, it's, we can obviously tell it's vacant, then we're canceling the policy for being vacant. And that just ends up being a bad experience for the customer. And then creates more work for the agent because now they are going back and forth between underwriting and the customer to get the policy corrected. So it's really best just to get that right up front, make it easy on the back end once you actually do change the usage and you're set.
Yeah, sounds like you could lose a lot of credibility with your customer if you don't do it right the first time.
Yes.
I bet that's true. Bernie, do you ever see this being endorsed and not being endorsed affecting claims outcomes?
I don't see it affecting claims outcomes on much of a basis. Our adjusters are going there, reading the policies, reading all the endorsements to make sure they're applying the coverage correctly every time. Now, adding an extra endorsement does add a little bit of time to their jobs, but that's what part of their job is doing, is reviewing all the policy and reviewing all endorsements to make sure we get it right every time.
And probably one of the big things, if they write the landlord policy and it's vacant, and then it's vacant for too long, because I think most states it's 60 days, if I remember right. There's a clause in the policy that basically says, hey, we're going to pay out less on a total loss. That's something that you referenced earlier.
A lot of them will have 60 or 90 days in regards to special perils, like if it's a fire loss or if it's a theft loss. Some of those things that happen more frequently when a property is vacant as opposed to occupied.
So it's important to get it right.
Yes. And it's, no, I was going to say, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, you referenced some of the perils that get dropped. Sometimes it's the amount of coverage as well. I believe the standard of most homeowner policies is after 90 days, the coverage drops down to 60%.
Yeah,
So I mean, you're taking 40% off the top.
yeah.
So if you had $100,000 and your house burns down, you're only getting 60 when you could have gotten 100.
Correct.
Right.
That's enough money to make it worth it to call the agent.
That is a big
Make the phone
change.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that we always say. Communication is key. The communication the agent has with the customer is key to understand the risk you're actually insuring. You know, at one point I was an independent agent, so I understand how those conversations can go and sometimes how hard it is to pull teeth of the customer to find out what's really going on. But not only communication with the customer, but then when you're talking to the company, you know, everything that we know about it up front just helps so much more when the inspection comes in, or if we have questions later, we can look at it and say and see notes. Hey, okay, this is exactly what's happening with this home. We're good. It's being renovated. Okay, we're good to go because they told us about it. We approved it. We're all set. So.
Well, then what I want to do is spend a little bit of time, because I think we got a good amount of information about just kind of what's going on in the market. I think now what we can do is, we did get some questions submitted from the company. We've also gotten some questions from agents. So Alexis cut them up and put them in the middle to draw from. So do we have anyone that wants to volunteer to answer a question?
I will volunteer.
Okay. So what we'll do is, you know, Matt will read out the question, but just because Matt's reading it doesn't mean, I know, Rat, that's your new nickname. Just because Matt's reading it, yeah, I know, right? He's like, no, I don't want to keep that.
That's not gonna stick.
Just because Matt's reading it doesn't mean that, you know, Troy, you can't jump in, Bernie, or even Alexis or myself can't jump in and answer the question. So what's the question that we got first?
All right, so the question is, what are some coverages that we provide when the home is vacant that other companies may not offer? So there's one endorsement that we offer that I think is huge compared to what a lot of other carriers are offering, and that is our comprehensive endorsement. It's not available in every state at this point, but it is available in numerous states.
The comprehensive endorsement, if you can sell that to your customer, please do from a claims aspect. So what that does is it takes it from a named peril policy where the policy is going to cover between 8 and 9 specific items that cause damage, and it's going to allow us to cover anything that's direct, sudden, and accidental that's not excluded by that policy for the first party homeowner damage. And that goes a long way. Frozen pipes. There's a whole lot of other claim scenarios that we'll probably talk about that really aren't covered when it's a named peril policy, but people, when they buy insurance, they do anticipate that's covered, and that's where that comprehensive coverage really helps.
Yeah.
And from the sales standpoint, one of the things I want to mention is one of the other endorsements that we offer is the Vandalism and Malicious Mischief endorsement. Well, under the comprehensive endorsement, vandalism and malicious mischief is one of the perils covered. So what we will see is the comp endorsement is $180 annually. That's flat rate no matter what the value of the home is. The vandalism and malicious mischief endorsement is not. That can change based on the value of the dwelling. So there have been many instances where the comp endorsement actually is less expensive than the vandalism and malicious mischief endorsement. Now, the one thing to remember when looking at adding the comp endorsement versus the vandalism and malicious mischief endorsement is the comp endorsement only covers the dwelling itself. So if there is a detached garage or any other structures, those additional perils would not be extended. Those other structures would only be covered at the named peril. But for most customers, that is a good. It's still a good fit and a good solution.
And I think that comprehensive endorsement is huge, and this is, I don't know, for whatever reason, Bernie, maybe it's from our claims background, but the claim I always think of is spilled paint, because I think, well, also I was staining my deck a couple weeks ago and spilled an entire gallon of paint, and I was like, you know what, I have a comprehensive homeowner's policy. Maybe they can save my deck. I saved it on my own. But, you know, these vacant properties, a lot of times they're vacant because they're renovating, and if you spill paint all over your carpet, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's obviously not a named peril, so.
And that's with, policies, you really got to look at that specific policy, the definitions in that policy to be able to get coverage right. There might be a couple different policies that might treat that situation a little bit differently.
Well, what are some, just coming from my sales background, when you're talking about this, because that's a good example, And just thinking, all right, so when you say things to me, like if I'm a customer and you say like vandalism, mischief, things along those lines, how would an agent use that when they're actually talking to them? Because if I'm like, hey, I can cover you for vandalism and malicious mischief, I'm going to be like, okay. So what would you like? What would you help me to? Would you give some examples? Like if I'm an agent, how am I going to use that? Am I going to use some examples?
So I would definitely use examples.
What are
So-
safe examples?
Yeah,
safe
there you
examples
go.
of like
Paint,
vandalism.
paint is not safe
All right.
apparently.
So a vandalism, a couple ones come to mind with vandalism claims we see a lot. Well, not a lot, but enough that
Okay.
it's common. You get your garage door graffitied.
Okay.
Neighborhood kid, 12, 15-year-old thinks it's really fun to use spray paint, comes around, spray paints all over your garage door. If you don't have vandalism or malicious mischief or the comprehensive coverage, that's not going to be covered by the named perils.
So
Okay,
so let me ask you this
positive.
then, because this is a little bit different. So if I'm, if my house is on the street and some kids are playing baseball and the ball goes through my window or hits my garage, things like that. Now that's different, right? I mean,
That's totally different. That's an accident.
yeah. So that's what I'm
So
saying.
that's where what Matt was talking about, especially if it's an attached garage.
yeah.
That's where the comprehensive coverage.
Exactly.
So anything
So it's
that's
important-
direct, sudden, accidental, physically damaging the property, that's not excluded. So that falling object of that baseball coming in
Yeah.
and hitting the property, then we could have coverage for that potentially.
My encouragement would be to simplify as well.
Yeah.
I know we went into a lot of detail about some of these different things, and
Yeah.
for the most part, though, when explaining vandalism, keep it simple. When explaining, my my biggest thing is when you're explaining what different things are covered or aren't covered. First of all, don't explain what is and is not covered.
Yeah.
That's a good.
It's always a
Let
good-
his people do
Good
that, please.
Yeah,
disclaimer.
it's always a good point.
Please leave all coverage investigations to your adjusters.
Yeah.
Do not start having coverage questions or conversations and explain, yes, this is covered or this isn't covered. Especially if a customer calls you and says, hey, this happened, is it covered? Help them file the claim. Help them, get in contact with our claims department. Most agents are not licensed adjusters, and which means at the end of the day, they are not legally able to say, yes, something is covered or is not covered. Do not bind coverage or do not, create an extra contractual what's the word I'm looking for?
Payment.
Yeah, thank you.
When an event happens to the home, Matt's completely correct. The best thing that you can do is help that customer get a claim filed, get an adjuster assigned, then an adjuster will investigate the coverage.
That's a great point, because just thinking from the perspective of the customer. I mean, I've been in an accident. I don't know about all of you, but when you're in an accident, you're razzled. You know what I mean? You're frazzled, and you aren't thinking clearly. So to have somebody who's an expert in handling claims and asking these questions, yeah, feel free to call your agent. They'll direct you over to an adjuster, but then the adjuster can ask you the right questions. To make sure you're actually covered. And make sure hey, this is something we cover, and just to get all the details as it happened, because you'll start to forget things after they happen, but you won't remember to answer those questions unless somebody's asking you the right questions.
Yeah. And the best thing that I see from a claims perspective that our agents can do when that happens is when your customer calls you, don't just give them, oh, here, call, file a claim at this number. Talk them through, set expectations of, hey, I'm going to give you a number, or even warm transfer over to file a claim with your customer. What we'll do is we'll be giving, the base information to one of the customer service associates. After that, they'll get us assigned with an adjuster who will be in contact with you, usually within 48 hours. Walk your customer through, set that expectation, because you're right, they're frazzled. Usually when our customer has a claim, it's probably one of their worst days of the year. So we all have to think about when we're having a bad day. Do we think always on our feet? No. So let's get them, set those expectations so they feel the comfort they need.
Yeah. And it's scary, right? Like if you've ever had anything like that happen, that's the whole reason you want an agent. You don't want to buy this online policy where you have to figure it out on your own. Your agent is the person that's there for you to hold your hand and make sure you get everything done the way it's supposed to be done. And so I think that's a huge selling piece for all the policies we offer here, not just Vacant. But I would be curious too, because I liked the claim examples on the vandalism and malicious mischief. I went the paint route on the comprehensive. Is there another easy kind of go-to where we can help people understand that?
Yeah.
Because between name, peril, and comprehensive, that's a huge difference in the coverage you're getting.
So the big one that I think of is a frozen pipe or a burst pipe.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's say the water heater bursts.
Right.
On your named peril policy, typically not going to be covered unless a vehicle crashed through the side of the house and hit the
And
water
hit
heater.
the water, right.
If you have a
Okay.
comprehensive policy, that water heater bursts due to wear and tear. Now, the water heater itself would not be covered, but the ensuing water damage that occurs from that sudden burst, there would be coverage for that on a comprehensive policy. So, or a frozen pipe. Gets a really cold spell. Pipe freezes. It thaws out before we get back to the property to check on it because it's vacant. It thaws out. Now water is spraying everywhere.
Okay.
That's not going to be covered on your named peril policy. Potentially could have coverage on the comprehensive policy. So
Okay.
those are huge exposures, and those things happen frequently.
Those are some of our common vacant
Yeah.
claims we see. Okay.
Right.
But so with what you're saying, I mean, kind of coming back to you, Matt, with keeping it simple. Do you think that's a simple enough scenario where if an agent's explaining that to a customer, hey, these are just the two differences, but relevant, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's relevant for them to know and be able to explain that to a customer so the customer understands the difference and why it's important. Who wants to draw next from the little bucket?
Paper, scissors.
He's over here. I'm
I
just
don't
playing,
wanna
you guys.
lose.
Dying
Rock,
to,
paper,
so just
scissors.
let
He's
him
like,
go.
I would probably do lizard or Spock, so you lose. but
I feel like it's
that's
gonna
all
be
right.
paper.
What is the downside to an agent packaging a rental that is either vacant or has tenants with the customer's auto and home?
First thing that comes to mind for me is it's trying to fit a round peg through a square hole. That carrier that writes your standard home and standard auto, they may not specialize in landlord properties or vacant properties. So what they're offering you is still an option, but it's not the option that's best for that customer. So by trying to package it, it's like, great, it's going to fit, but there's going to be gaps in the corner. That round peg doesn't have corners, so there are gaps in coverage there, and that's very similar to what will happen with those policies. That's probably one of the biggest disadvantages that I can think of.
I would agree.
Well, I think you were even talking about, right, how I think, Troy, you might have even said it, some places don't even have the vacant,
Right.
write the vacant. So,
Yeah.
that would be difficult if you do package and then you need to go over to vacant and then it's like, oh, well, we actually don't even offer that.
Right.
So then you're kind of in a little bit of trouble there.
Yeah, exactly. Or, well, they don't have a vacant, but we'll keep it on this policy. And then we already talked earlier about
Oh.
big coverage limitations when that happens. Payout limitations, all of that is huge. So,
And I'm sure those other carriers aren't having that conversation about the vacant, just kind of how we've talked
Right.
about a lot of these different vacant situations and things that can happen. They're probably not even having that conversation. So there are customers out there who could be sitting there without any real coverage on their vacant and they don't even know it.
right, right, absolutely. And we don't care if we have the standalone vacant. We don't require that we also write your primary, that we also write this. We're okay saying, hey, that vacant home is the only thing we have for this customer, and we're okay with that. So,
And that's one of the biggest selling features of Foremost, is the fact that we are a specialty carrier. And so what that means is at the end of the day, we're here to write policies for products that do not fit cleanly under a standard home or a standard auto policy. And to a point that you made just a few moments ago, you said some of those other carriers may not really be too focused on the vacant side of things. Their core competency is going to be on that home and auto. Well, you're not going to go to an optometrist if you're having issues with your heart. That's not what they focus on. That's not what they studied in. So for us, that's what we do. That's what we see every single day. That's what our claim adjusters are trained in. That's what our underwriters are trained in. Versus someone that's trained in, okay, well, how do I adjust a claim on a standard home policy? Well, it's not the same.
And I think as a consumer, that just kind of brings it full circle for me. If I'm ever trying, or maybe even as an agent to a customer, reversing it, if I'm ever trying to win out in the price battle, that's the way you do it. The price is different. Explain to me why, because I'm giving you the coverage that's right for the risk that you have.
Right.
And I think it's huge that we can offer that for all these little niches, especially the vacant. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, especially if it's like, hey, yeah, it's cheaper over here, but also they don't cover it vacant, so you're going to be paying, and there's potential that damages happen and you aren't even covered for
Right.
it. So
Or
what's really
even
the point of
that
paying on
decrease in
something?
coverage if your house burns, that 100,000 to 60,000. That's enough for me to pay an extra $100 a year just in case something happens.
right,
That's worth
exactly.
it. Just explain it to me, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't leave the lot celebrating that you saved $10,000 when you got that Ford Pinto when you were really there for that Ford Mustang.
Yeah.
I suppose that's true. You
Yeah.
use that one with the agents, tell them to pass that to the customers.
Once or twice.
All
Do
right.
you want to ask a question now?
This is me. All right.
Yeah, let's see what we've got in there.
Okay. If you could speak to all of our agents, what message about Vacant would you want them all to hear?
Sell more vacant policies.
Please.
Keep it simple, right? Back to that.
Yes.
Just sell more.
So I think a lot of it we've kind of already covered too when we talk about we'll do the standalone. You know, we're happy with that. We love vacant homes. You know, it's been something that's been successful for us. We like insuring them. It's been successful for our agents. Again, it gives you another line to write more business that you may not have through another carrier, which I think is huge. And we're here for you.
And if you're ever not sure, call your territory manager. Let us know. We're here to help. I handle Central and Southern Illinois. There's someone that handles Northern Illinois. We have people in almost every state. We have inside. We have field. So there is a lot of support here to help.
Just to continue to gather that knowledge that really just helps, just like these conversations that we're having today, just something else that further helps you understand the different types of policies and coverages that just equips you for the conversations, for having the open lines of communications with your customers. You know, we're really there to, while we really work on making sure that our staff is educated and really understands, we want to make sure that our agents are as well. So we do what we can to make sure that they know how to sell the value of the foremost policy to their customers and what the benefits are. So I think that's a really good point.
But speaking of that one thing too, because we're talking about vacants, so we do a lot of these vacants that are under renovation, and I think a lot of people are put off by all of the windows are boarded. We're actually okay with that on a vacant policy. You're securing the home, so we don't mind seeing boarded windows at all
On vacant.
on vacants. Yes.
And this is a good point to say, you know, as we're talking about all this, and we're talking about different types of coverages, different types of damages, different types of claims,
Yeah.
during this conversation, by no means are we binding coverage for anything. and I need to put that out there because you know, this isn't like, hey, you know, an agent or says, you know, hey, I don't know, the Foremost podcast, the forecast, they said it was
boarded
okay.
windows are
Yeah,
good,
exactly.
so-
Yeah.
So these are, you know, it's just important to just remember that, you know, it's obviously, if you have questions, you know, talk to your territory manager as an agent. And if you or your customer or anything, if a claim's happening, talk to the adjuster. You know, they know the information. They'll be able to go through with you. Don't reference the Foremost Forecast
Yeah.
crew.
Please don't.
Please don't throw us in the bus in this.
Yeah.
And self-plug, if it's an eligibility question, underwriting's a phone call away as well.
Which is a good
So,
point.
Yeah.
You can give a call as an agent. You can give a call out
if
to
you're not
underwriters.
sure if this is going to be eligible or not, dial our 800 number
Yeah.
and ask. So,
I think that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of it's not just, you know, working with, as though it is great to call Matt and work with your territory manager. You know, you can speak with underwriting. You know, a lot of Foremost is accessible to ask those questions. We've got specialists and we're willing to answer those questions
Right.
to help you better sell the policy and better understand the policy.
Yep,
So that's a really good point.
And I highly encourage it, to be honest,
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, I'm not an underwriter.
Yeah.
I am not going to make the final underwriting decision. That's his crew. That's we're all part of the same team, but they are the experts on that part. My role is to try to help agents write as much business as possible. Their role is to try to make sure it's as profitable as possible.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
that's
and
a
it is
good
kind of the joke. It's not underwriting's job to just say no. We also want to find ways to write business.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
You guys do a good job of that too.
thank you.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'll go ahead and I'll grab a question.
You should grab the one that you discarded.
But
I know I should. I know I do really
wanna know
badly
what-
want to
you
take a
guys
look
wanna
at
know
that
what
I would
it
like to at
question.
least read it, yeah.
Right. What are common claims that you typically see on vacant risks?
All right, so we already discussed that.
I
Moving
know,
on.
that's why I skipped it.
No, that's good. See, but now
Well,
we
you
left
left
out
a mystery for everyone.
Before you read yours, I wanted to ask too, if I can remember what we were talking about, the renovation piece. we kind of talked about that a lot. Is that something that other people aren't accepting? Is that unusual that we allow for that? I was just kind of curious on that myself.
So from my standpoint, it's the question typically comes up about builder's risk. It gets compared to builder's risk a lot. So with the renovations, the question that unfortunately I think we say no to the most is, hey, it's a new build. And the nice thing is we actually will accept new builds, but they must be within, and please correct me if at any point I say something that is incorrect. They must be within 90 days of completion. They must be fully enclosed. They must have heating, electrical, plumbing all hooked up to them. But really where that can be a benefit, though, is let's say that builder's risk policy is coming to the conclusion of it, and the builder's almost done with it, and now the owner is kind of putting some of the final touches on it or something along those lines.
Okay.
So, or even if they want to get their own liability policy on it because they started moving some of their own furniture in, they want to make sure they have coverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
That actually gives me a little anxiety because we built a house and I'm thinking about the time that it sat after it was done. I probably should have had something on it because I bet the builder stopped with their policy at some point.
That's a good point. Do they?
Do you guys know anything about
Do
that
they
process?
stop?
Is that?
I would not speak to that
It's
part of
probably
it.
Yeah.
just
each
because
builder
that
is individual. Everywhere has
Yeah.
different rules,
Yeah.
I'm
That's a
sure.
good
But
point.
You should have called your foremost agent.
I
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
What was I thinking? I mean,
Yeah. All right, so let's take a look. The next question. All right, well, I think this is a pretty good one. What are some common misunderstandings about our vacant policy?
The biggest misunderstanding I believe that I run across or I get asked about is what actually is a vacant property.
oh, that's a good one.
And so a lot of times I'll receive a phone call where I get the question, hey, someone's running by the house every other day. Is anybody staying in it? No. Okay, well, if no one's actually residing in the home, it's vacant. So I think that is the biggest misconception that we run across on a daily basis.
Yeah. And to kind of add to that, again, what is a vacant? So another thing we talked about quite a bit earlier is that it's going to be a rental, but it's not occupied now. So that's one misconception that people think I can just write it as a rental right now. But then outside of that, what is a vacant? And again, you kind of hit on this earlier. Vacant property should have a plan of some sort. You know, it's going to be on the market. It's going to be for sale. My mother-in-law just passed away, and we don't really know what we're going to do with it, but we're, keeping an eye on it. What we don't want are the abandoned properties, the ones where nobody's taking care of it. It's just there, because that invokes a lot of problems.
So I'm glad you just said that. So that is one of the things too. So you mentioned there needs to be a plan for it. One of the biggest misunderstandings is that we are willing to write a vacant property that is going to be vacant forever. I've actually had this happen a couple times. So the first time it came up, I thought, okay, this is just strange. It's an isolated incident. Then it happened the second time, the third time, the fourth time. Now I think it's a normal thing. I received a phone call. Hey, a customer bought their neighbor's house and they're just leaving it empty. Why? They don't want neighbors.
Oh.
Okay. So no plan? Nope. They're just going to leave it vacant. We're not insuring at that point. 'Cause
Yeah.
really, at
Yeah.
that point, that exposes a lot of claim issues. That
Right.
expose, from the underwriting, are they going to maintain and upkeep the house?
Yep.
Things where if they're going to flip it and sell it, yeah, they're going to want to make sure it stays in a condition that sells it. But if
Right.
their goal is just, look, I don't want someone living next to me, then we're
Yeah.
not going to insure.
That's going to create a lot of long-term issues, potentially animals, pests,
Yeah.
just a lot of not sudden events to the home.
Now, as an agent, asking those questions and finding that out, that's good that they don't write it. Why is it important that they find that out? Obviously for us and for them, but what could be some repercussions? So what you were saying is it wouldn't be covered? Or?
I wouldn't say it wouldn't be covered, but there's going to be some, when you're not properly maintaining a home, a lot of bad things happen to the home. And when non-sudden events happen to the home, like let's just say
Termites.
or let's say there's a small drip in the roof.
Yeah.
Small drip in the roof, and it just leaks and leaks and leaks. And then eventually the living room ceiling collapses. Well, that's something, if it was vacant or a rental property, that would be caught really early on as soon as you see a water stain on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Well, if it's abandoned, nobody's in there for 6 months, well, guess what? You're having water issues. A long-term leakage like that or leakage through a roof is not covered. it makes sense why we would stay away from those properties.
So one other repercussion, we have a lot of agents that are on profit sharing through us
Yeah,
and
that's a good
contingencies,
point.
and part
That's a
of
really good point.
part of those payments are based on your loss ratio. And if all of a sudden you have a $120,000 house, $80,000 house, I mean, if you think about it, that will really raise that loss ratio up really quickly, and so that could be the difference between receiving that extra payment at the end of the year and not receiving that extra payment of the year. So.
Well, I think we got one question in there. Matt,
All right,
I can
Matt,
see
it's
you
your
grabbing
turn.
for it.
Yeah, it's right in front of me. I figured
Yeah,
it'd be
why
nice
not?
and easy. Why do you think we have been so successful in writing vacant business?
Oh,
think it's a
that's a
good
way.
last question.
Yeah,
It is a
I
good
think
last
it's a good way
question.
to wrap it up.
It wasn't planned like that, but it is a good question.
They seem like it.
First thing that comes to my mind of why we're best suited for vacant products is, like Matt said earlier, we are a specialty carrier. Everyone that works with our Foremost products, they have that special knowledge that they know what makes this product unique. So that makes them adept and able to handle the product.
Yeah, and I think another thing is because of the fact we designed it specifically to insure vacant homes. You know, that's what we went into the market to do with this product. It's not like okay, we insure houses, but sometimes they go vacant. Maybe we should do something about that. You know, we really intended to say, no, we want to insure vacants. We've been doing it for a while. We're not just in the market to test the waters at this point. We're dedicated to it, and we do it well. So.
We strive to create a better insurance experience here, and part of that is the reason why we've been so successful with vacant policies. We listen to feedback, we solicit feedback. So when in certain markets we learn, hey, we need to provide additional peril coverage, we have product working on creating a comprehensive endorsement. When we learn, well, in some areas we need to have these type of settlement options, they work to create those options. So it's through that, I think that, you know, it's the culmination of everything we've been discussing this morning. But it's all those things that come together. It's not just one individual piece. It's the training that underwriting goes through. It's the training that claims goes through. It's the conversations and relationships that we build up with agents from inside sales and in all of marketing, even with the field sales, that I think contribute to that, or attribute to that rather.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think that's a lot of good information. I think this morning, like you said, we've gone through a lot of good information. This is going to be beneficial, like you said, to help provide that better insurance experience. I mean, to learn about vacants today, hopefully the agents will take this information and it helps them in their, in their conversations with customers, helps them to understand that, hey, the vacant policy with Foremost is a policy we love to write. It's a policy that we're knowledgeable about and something that other carriers honestly just don't do. So it's good to know that information. Alexis, do you have any other follow-ups, questions, anything like that?
I don't think so.
All right.
No
Well,
other
then,
questions.
thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with us this morning, taking a look at the Foremost forecast, talking about the vacant policy with Foremost. And thank you very much. Have a good day.